I'm one of the most notorious slashers in history.
The slasher, my favorite subgenre of horror. Today we're going to be talking about the various different big franchises. We won't be discussing lesser known franchises like Sleepaway Camp or Hatchet. We also will not be talking about one-offs like Alice Sweet Alice or anything of that nature. No, we're going to talk about the big boys. The Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween. This is Slasher Royalty, and we're going to discuss the best film in each franchise. The Terrifier franchise. Now, many of you are probably asking, why is the Terrifier franchise in here? And it's a simple answer. Art the Clown is the most iconic character since Ghostface back in the 1990s. If you go to Halloween stores anywhere, you will see Art merchandise all over the place. And the best film in this franchise is Terrifier 3. Terrifier 3 is a combination of the first and the second Terrifier. It has the grindhouse over-the-top style kills of the first one, but it also has the lore building and backstory of the second one. It takes these things and weaves them both together in a very nice little package. It is super violent, and it shows a very funny side of art, which none of the movies really had done before that. It's also a little controversial. I can't really say why people were so mad about this, but there is a scene where he blows up a Christmas tree in the mall. A kid opens a present and kaboom, and it's a wide shot. It doesn't show anything too graphic. The most recent version of Michael Myers killed a couple kids off screen and was even holding one's head in his hand. So I don't know what people are on about with art, but Terrifier 3 checks all the boxes. It was a fantastic theater experience, and it's a good home experience. If you want some violent kills and a character that can display quite a bit of emotions without saying a word, Terrifier 3 is the film for you. The Child's Play franchise. Chucky is a global icon. There are 7 films, and technically an 8th one because it was a terrible reboot made by another company, and a TV series. But of all these films, the best one is still the 1988 original, Child's Play. There have been many films made about dolls before and since, but Chucky put the fear of God into a bunch of children for entire generations that can't stand being around creepy looking dolls. Back in the 80s, the My Little Buddy doll was a big craze, and this was a takeoff of that. Chucky is not the first killer to have a personality, but he is the slasher with the most personality. And that's what makes him so scary. Even though he's a doll, he acts the most human. This movie is very memorable not only because of Brad Dourif's performance, just because of the sheer amount of practical effects. The doll looks better than some of the later entries in the franchise. One of the most memorable scenes is when the mother picks Chucky up and sees that he doesn't have any batteries and basically threatens him to talk or she's going to throw him in the fire, and he goes ballistic. That scene makes me laugh every time. Child's Play is a fantastic story, and it established the icon that is Chucky that we know and love today. And I don't care if they make 75 more Chucky movies. The first one will always be the best. The Scream franchise. 7 movies later, and we are still talking about this thing. In fact, the most recent one just broke a bunch of box office records, which I reviewed fairly recently, and you can see in my mini shorts playlist. Shameless plug for me. But of all the Scream movies, the one that stands out the most is the original. People have said this many times, but Scream effectively reinvigorated the entire slasher genre, which was completely dead in the 90s. And many movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend and a bunch of other ones were able to come out because of the success of Scream. There had been many movies before that had done the meta commentary, kind of knowing that they were in a horror movie, but Scream actually perfected it. Even the entire setup with Drew Barrymore on the posters being a callback to Psycho and having her just killed off in the first scene and paving the way for Neve Campbell to be the head of the entire franchise, it is a masterclass in storytelling. It's a good way to parody a genre and keep you entertained, and even all these years later, it holds up fairly well. And the Ghostface mask is iconic, but it never hits quite the same as it did in that first film, and that's why the first movie and the originator of the whole franchise is the best one. A Nightmare on Elm Street. What a franchise. We just discussed Scream, which Wes Craven did, but now we're discussing his original masterpiece, A Nightmare on Elm Street. This franchise had taken the world by storm. Freddy really was a character that completely changed the game, having a personality. Not only was the killer coming after you, but he would talk shit to you while he did it. Now, there is a lot of debate as to what is the best movie in the franchise, but for me, it is the original, A Nightmare on Elm Street. This is when Freddy was his most powerful, his most scary. I've talked about this movie on my channel before, but the scenes like Freddy's hand coming out of the bathtub, his face going through the wall, Johnny Depp being killed, and it has one of the best horror protagonists of all time, Nancy. Even in this first film, as Freddy comes after her and kills her friends off one by one, she sets a trap for him and she fights back, and competently, I might add, and is actually one of the few characters that plans ahead and doesn't die. At least not in this film. And while some of the budgets and effects were better in other films, nothing quite hits you just as hard as this original one. The Halloween franchise. Now, this is the franchise that is considered the father of all slashers. That's not completely true, but it did open the door for all the ones that came later. And there have been many movies. As a matter of fact, there are more Halloween movies than there are Friday the 13th movies, surprisingly. But most of you already know what I'm going to say. This topic is not debated that much except for a couple outliers. But the original Halloween 1978 is an absolute classic. It wasn't super gory. It had one of the most amazing scores, and it really was just the idea that evil is coming for you. There is a certain level of raw tension that most slashers could not recreate that Halloween the original has. And they keep having to remake it, and they keep going back to it, but none of these new ones, they're not going to have Donald Pleasence as Dr. Loomis. And Jamie Lee Curtis, while she was inexperienced, she was a great protagonist as Laurie Strode. There is a subtlety to Halloween that even people that don't like slashers in general have to admit. It is just a masterpiece of a film, and it can't be beat by any of its remakes or subsequent sequels. Friday the 13th. This is my absolute favorite slasher franchise. I love Jason. I love the settings of Friday the 13th, even Jason X when it's in space. Now, while Michael Myers was the template from the Halloween movies, Jason Voorhees is the next evolution. And of all the Friday the 13th movies, the best one is Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. Besides the great kills and chase scenes and all the other stuff that this film has, we have Crispin Glover doing his dance. We have a young Corey Feldman doing a fantastic job in one of his first major roles. The thing about this film is, if it were to have been the final chapter of the franchise, it was a perfect culmination of all the movies that came before it. I know a lot of people have different films that they like in this franchise, but honestly, this one was executed to perfection, and I can't see any other film in this franchise ever competing with it. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, this franchise is hit or miss all over the place. In fact, of all the ones I've named so far, it probably has the most dog shit sequels of the bunch. For some reason, in recent years, they just cannot get this right. However, the best film in the entire franchise is the original 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not only do I think that's the best in this franchise, I think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the best horror movie of all time. See, I've known many older people that saw this movie in these things that you kids have never heard of called drive-ins. And they will sit there and tell me how gory the movie was and the crazy amounts of blood that were in this film. And then I look them in the eye and I go, you realize there really wasn't hardly any blood in this film at all. Because that's the thing about this movie. While it is violent at times, it never goes for the gore factor. This movie is more psychological than anything. There is a scene where Sally is taped to a chair and the camera zooms in on her eyes and it zooms back at the family just laughing at her. and back to her eyes. And the way that her eyes move all over the place, it's not what you personally are seeing. It's what you don't see that makes this movie so scary and psychologically damaging. Which is why all these older people have amnesia and their mind made up some shit that they think is true, but it's actually not. That's how good of a fucking film this is. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was raw, gritty, and at the end of the day, when you finish watching this film, you cannot help but be satisfied. And Leatherface, while he's in a bunch of bad movies, he is one of the most iconic horror villains of all time. So anyway, guys, that's my list. Feel free to disagree with it if you want, but of course, if you do, you would be wrong. But still, that shouldn't stop you from leaving your favorite films in the comments and let the debate begin. So thank you for watching The Derek Ruby Show, and I'll see you guys next time.